Welcome to the Mind and Body Performance Podcast. I'm Jake Murphy, and today I'm joined by Jonathan Guarino. We're talking mindset, training, lifestyle, and what high-level performance really demands. Jonathan Guarino, thank you for hopping on call with us today. Obviously, we're glad you're here. Just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up about Jonathan, he works with youth athletes, ages, what's your youngest age, Jonathan?
Youngest age, third grade.
Third grade. All right, so third grade, that's about 10 to, and who's your oldest client?
Oldest client is sophomore in college.
Sophomore in college, so that's 20 years old. All right, so 10 to 20, working mainly on lacrosse development, but he wants to also get into some athletic style movement with his youth athletes. Jonathan, welcome.
Jake, thanks for the intro. I really appreciate it.
No, of course. Listen, I'm
Yeah.
I'm really happy that we could finally. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time now. I'm happy we could actually coordinate a nice time for us to really hop in here and get to know each other. Obviously, just to give you guys a background of me and Jonathan, like we're both in similar fields. Really trying to do the same exact thing. We're working with athletes of all ages, both boy and girl athletes, and something that we both were talking about was the importance of the development aspect of the game. Jonathan, when you're developing an athlete, what do you think is like, what do you see the most of? And let's actually stick with the youth side of things. So like with your younger athletes, what is the main thing that you're seeing that they need in order to improve and kind of take that next step?
So that's a great question, Jake. I think that it's actually like my answer is a prerequisite to more of the more of the development. So I think I see a lot of parents and coaches working with their children or their athletes, and they jump right into the development. But I think the prerequisite to development is really understanding an athlete's temperament. I've been saying this for years, and it was kind of an aha moment that I had years ago. I was coaching some wrestling and some lacrosse, and I was just in a conversation in a weight room, and this coach was telling me, you have to first acclimate and adjust to that athlete's temperament before you can get any kind of point across. So I really have found that that's the prerequisite to truly developing an athlete. If you just jump into your curriculum, jump into your plans, and they're not receptive to that, it's probably a matter of you not taking the time to develop a chemistry and developing a comfort with that athlete. So again, my answer is really that prerequisite to where most of the work happens.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that you said that kind of hit me was the individualization. You said it kind of indirectly, but when you work with the athlete one on one, you could really see their weaknesses and what they need to improve. Do you feel like, do you have any sort of like system as far as when you're looking at an athlete, and right before you're about to start working with them, what are like some things you're looking for? Is it their rotation on their shot? Is it their hand placement on the stick? Like what is like something that you're really looking for in a youth athlete when they first start working with you?
Yeah, I think above all, it's really about how receptive they are to instruction. And the first thing is, you know, when I'm viewing them, the first thing I think the first thing, Jake, is looking at like how focused are they? Okay. If they're not that focused, then we have some work to do. If they are focused, it takes a lot of the not the guesswork, but a lot of the load off of me. So focus is definitely number one, and then second is I think focus is the foundation, and then you can worry about the nuances of like hand placement, hip rotation, how the feet move, which is something I want to ask you about eventually is footwork. But you look at the body from like a bird's eye view, and then there's just all these little things you could pick apart. But focus and their determination is definitely without that it's hard to get a foundation.
Absolutely, because it's hard to I like that you said that because it's very hard to coach an athlete that's not focused.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky, and I'm sure you are too. Most of the time when the athlete's coming to us and they're working on their development, they really want to be there. And that's something that I notice is that they're usually there's a desire to be there, there's a passion, and that's
Yeah.
something like. And I talk to a lot of my athletes too. It's like when you come to session, it's like school. We're in school still. This isn't and the best part about it is that when you're training for sport, you're obviously working on the athlete, but you're also working on yourself,
Right.
personally. because you're having those set of emotions and frustrations, and you are battling with the ability to focus, and that's something that I see a lot too. I think that especially at the youth level, is the cell phones and technology and what it does to your focus. This is something that I was talking to Coach Jimmy Montana about recently, was the technology and how it's affecting the mind of youth athletes, and their ability to focus. Do you feel like that's something that, comes into play within your practice? Do a lot of your athletes, are they spending a lot of time in front of a screen?
You know what's so funny? I hate to, I'm not one of those people who's a proponent of like comparing generations, but sometimes you have to when you look at technology and just the habits and the styles that the kids these days have. I don't knock them for it. I just think they are they're a product of again like evolution and technology and all that stuff. So I definitely find a lack of focus because of that. And what I also find funny, Jake, is I think you and I are similar in age. So we're from like a similar generation. When you and I were growing up, I don't remember there being an incentive to work harder for like, ice cream or like these or like to get the iPad back. Like we didn't really to us, we just wanted to get better. We wanted to be more competitive with our friends. And it was kind of it wasn't barbaric. It was that's how it was. We were outside all the time and we just wanted to get more competitive, wanted to win more. Now I'm finding there's this odd angle that, parents and coaches are taking, not coaches, but parents are taking as far as incentivizing their kid to do better for, like I just said, like these rewards that we didn't really that's not what motivated us. So I'm definitely seeing even that I think is a problem in itself because now you're telling the kid, hey, you'll get back, we'll give you that stimulation back if you do good in the sport. But we're trying to get them away from that. We just want them to be outside, interacting, eye contact. These things are huge, and I hope we're not the last generation that has that. But that's what I'm seeing.
So incentives coming from materialistic things.
Yeah, like what happened to just getting better for the sake of getting better? That elation, that euphoria of just like, oh man, I just Jake just beat Jonathan on a split dodge, and that high you get after that. You know what I'm saying? Like that
Yeah, yeah,
to us,
yeah, the natural.
that was the reward. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think you make a great point when you're talking about that too, is like the reward system. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good, but I also think that the reward system is your improvement. The reward system's on game day, and that's what like that delayed gratification coming into piece. That's something that actually, I mean, stuff that I research is talking about the differences between delayed gratification and instant gratification, and we obviously live in a world that is so fixated on that instant. If I want to eat something, if I'm hungry, I could just go on DoorDash and I got food at my place in 30 minutes, and I think
right.
that with that, even an athlete, if they want to feel like they're in a game, they could just go on a video game and start playing, and all of a sudden they're getting this dopamine release. They're getting this release as if they're actually doing it, but they're not. It's just all happening within the mind.
Yeah,
Um, very, very, very interesting to think about, and I do think that the reward should be, what we do on game day. The reward should be taking it practice by practice, piece by piece, one day at a time. Because,
yeah,
and I think that that's something that as coaches, we can do a good job of showing, like, hey, listen, you're doing this work, but what's the reason why? Why are we doing this? And
yeah,
it's actually funny. I'll get into a little bit of that. Is like yesterday, I had a session and I immediately asked the kids why. Why are we here? Because the beginning of the session is the most boring part. It's the things that they actually need. We got to work on core. We got to work on hip strength, and they obviously don't want to do it. So I posed that question like, why are we here? We're here to improve our health. We're here to get stronger, and we're here to get better at sport. And they said that right then and there because we had gone over it a couple sessions earlier. And I think when you give that, like, that's the incentive. You give the why, it's like that's the power behind everything. It's like, okay, now I got power. You just gave me power. You gave me a reason why.
right.
And I feel like, especially to go back to what you were saying with the gratification of like the reward system of here, you could get ice cream or you could get tablet. Now it's instead of us working hard for our health, for our longevity, for our sport. Now it's like, oh, I'm working hard for this external validation, coming from the ice cream, coming from the tablet, instead of it being internal. I think that definitely, in the long run, will hinder a development for an athlete.
Yeah.
Is exactly what you were saying, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and Jake, I wanted to ask you. I mean, I seen your, the things you teach. I seen your high school sessions. They're so awesome. With the, I have done a lot of youth training. I absolutely love my high school and college training. I'm building it more, but I know you do a lot of it. What do you find is the incentive when it comes to these elite high school athletes that you train? What's, you kind of just touched on it, but like putting that aside, like when they come to a session, what's the vibe you're getting, that like why are they there? What do you feel that is really motivating them to work hard based off of your instruction?
They're committed. They're committed.
Yeah.
I haven't met a single athlete that I've worked with that didn't want to be there, that wasn't like passionate, committed to what they were doing. And that, I think, commitment levels, when you look at athletes, there's definitely different commitment levels. You have athletes that show up every day to practice and they work hard, and they show up to game day, they work hard. Then you got athletes that show up to practice, show up to game day, and then they're training outside of sport. Then you have athletes, and let's say they're training for lacrosse. Then you have athletes that show up to practice, games, they train lacrosse outside, they show up to the gym. Then you have the athlete that pieces it all together and is showing up to practice, game, then they're training outside of practice, they're strength training, they're recovering, and then they're focusing on everything that they consume, whether it be
Mhm.
coming from food, hydration, what they read, who they listen to, what they're doing on a daily basis. It's what they're consuming. And that's where I think, and this is something that I try to really push on the athletes, but there's obviously a push pull. You can't do too much as a coach. But you're trying to push the athlete to want to work on themselves outside of the game. Because the more you work on yourself outside the game, anytime you're one on one, and in the game of lacrosse, there is one on one situation. Yeah, it's a team sport, but you're going one on one against your matchup. There's one on ones all over the place. I feel like you gain confidence when you're working on yourself outside of the game, and it's like it's in that time, in that moment where you are by yourself. And that's what you get with individualized training and small group, is that, and this is what I tell the athletes, I'm a guide. I'm here for your support. I'm giving you coaching. I'm a guide, but you're pretty much here by yourself. This is pretty much you working on yourself. Now you're just bringing another mind into the piece. And so I've been very fortunate to work with athletes that are extremely committed to developing themselves. And it first comes from the parents, right? Because the parents are the ones that are setting it up. And so when a parent really cares about their child's development and they really want them to improve, they want them to feel confident, they want them to feel strong, they're going to prioritize it, and set that structure for them, set that sense of support, and they're going to put them in a position where they can work with somebody, learn perspective and philosophy. And so it trickles down to the kid, but it's also the parent who's committed for the kid because they're so passionate about their development. And that's definitely something that I see more so at the high school level. There's also very committed youth athletes, and I'm sure you've seen that too. Youth
Yeah.
athletes that are really passionate about their game. And that's something, like, I guess I'll dive into this question too for you, is like, with a committed athlete, how much is too much, do you think? What is like that breaking point where it's like, okay, now you're overworking your athlete, because a lot of these athletes, and I'm sure you have a lot of them too, that are playing multiple teams, multiple sports, and they're just competing. They're competing, they're competing, they're competing.
Mhm.
Is there a point where it's too much for them, to where it overworks them and they get burnt out?
So that's a great question. I've actually never thought about that answer, but I'm gonna go off the cuff here. So if let's take, you have your committed athlete, right? I think that what's great about that is that they have this natural motivation and this natural inclination to be like, hey, I want to go train with Jonathan, or I want to go train with Jake today. They're ready and they're focused, even on the days that they're not focused. I think when you push someone like that, you have to be careful because they're already doing so much. So if you have a really type A parent, if that athlete has a really type A parent that's just like, you got to do more, 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 more when they're already doing so much, and it's admirable the effort that they're putting in, you're going to burn that person out. I I played lacrosse and I wrestled at a relatively high level in high school and then in college, and I've seen it really in like the upperclassmen years of high school, where you'll have this outstanding college commit athlete and you have these parents that just they push them to the edge. And I think that, like many things in life, that mentor or that parent athlete relationship, it's a dance, and you have to be smart about when to pull back, right? Like, self-care and recovery is just as important as going super hard as a committed athlete. And I don't know what you incorporate as far as recovery with your athletes, but 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I don't know the science behind this, but like 8 to 10 hours of sleep, it can be just as beneficial as doing a two a day, or it's just
Absolutely.
it's a full picture. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't just it can't just be foot on the gas all the time,
All the
all the
time.
time, all the time, right? So that's definitely what I would say. But yeah, I think the committed athletes, I think they know that too. I think to an extent they have a general understanding of like what they can tolerate because they already know that they're doing so much. Um, it makes me think of this quote. I don't know if this is relevant or not, but this coach says he's talking to a football team and um, he said something like, "Winners they like overwork and think they're not doing enough, and losers underwork and think that I don't know something like that." You probably
And
heard that,
think they're doing enough. No, no, no. That's actually
right?
interesting
Right?
that
Right?
you
Right?
that's interesting you even you mentioned that because it's true. You're
Yeah.
constantly questioning. You have to constantly question yourself, no matter how good you're doing. Sometimes I even, and I'll just reference myself too, is like I'll be thinking about, how hard I'm working for growing my business, coaching as many people as possible, growing my income, trying to build a family. And I have to constantly reflect back on myself, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And deep down inside, I'm asking myself that question. I feel like yes.
Yeah.
But is there always something that I can do a little bit more? There almost is.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't always need to be, and similar to what you said earlier, is it doesn't always have to be beat down, beat down, beat down. And that's something where like it does need to get to the point where you are balanced in each category. Something I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan. I listen to Kobe Bryant with a lot of my online athletes. And reason why is I just like his mentality, the Mamba mentality of constantly learning, applying, and growing. And something that we pull from his lessons is the work, right? You're trying to significantly outwork your opponent per se. Although I like to reference it, I really think you're outworking yourself every day. But at the same time, when he's talking about getting reps after reps after reps, for me, I think it's the same thing, but your reps are broken down into so many different areas. Your reps are in what you're reading, it's in your training, it's in your hydration, it's in your sleep, it's in your nutrition, it's in your strength training, it's in your recovery, it's in your relationships because even relationships that are around you are going to affect your stress levels. That's going to affect your play. So there's so many things that are involved. And, I talk to a lot of parents and a lot of athletes, and a lot of them will mention just the training piece, just the lacrosse playing, just the strength training. It's like, yes, we want to look into that. But if we're really looking to maximize performance levels, you have to look at every single area of the athlete's life and what's going on. And once you know that, then you could put together like some sort of structured plan to get them to be putting time and effort, attention into each area. And, the athletes that do it, I especially this is a lot of my online coaching, and I like online because you're coaching the mind. You're not coaching the body. You're coaching solely the mind. It's through conversation just like this, where we sit down with the athlete and we're just talking about their goals and what they need to do. And you really see a lot of changes and growth with the athlete over time if they apply everything that we're talking about. And it's not just, I try my best not to speak as much, within sessions. Sometimes it happens, if we're passionate,
Yeah, yeah.
happens. But a lot of it is like trying to draw the athlete to find it themselves, and
Mm,
I think that that's something that's powerful because when they find it themselves, it's going to increase their confidence.
yeah. Um, I don't mean to interrupt your thought process. Um, so there's a few things I'm thinking of. I want to give like a little mini PSA to all the athletes that we're training, especially the committed ones. It's really important as a young athlete to do a very to do a very serious audit of those categories in your life. I think what you're doing online coaching is really important because until an athlete gets good at speaking and gets good at listening, it's very difficult for them to compartmentalize the categories of their life and take an actual audit of their life. You don't need a million categories. You can have, let's say you have 5 categories, right? Recovery, family, lacrosse, strength training, friends. I'm just taking an example, right?
Absolutely.
Until you have an online coaching session and you label those 5 categories, only then can you do a true audit and then make adjustments. Um, to piggyback on that, Jake, you played at the highest level, and I admire like the way you play, what you teach, um, etc. When I'm sure you can relate to this, I have been training a kid who is looking to commit right now, and I love he's a pleasure to work with. Right, he makes me focus on brevity, so I'm not babbling. Which, like you said, when we're passionate, we can do that. He makes me focus on brevity when I'm trying to convey ideas. He makes me a better trainer. He makes me a better coach. But something happened the other day in our session where he's been working really hard lately, and we had one rep where I felt it and he felt it. That feeling of euphoria, like, oh my God, something just clicked. That was a great rep. You know that feeling I'm talking
Uh,
about? Okay.
yes, yes.
So what's important is I'm thinking about this week is as athletes and as trainers, we need to chase those reps because you can do 150 reps in a session, but if only 10 of those reps you get that euphoric feeling from those reps, I don't know how effective of a practice that is. Okay,
Abs
sometimes you know this, you played at the highest, you definitely know this. If you, let's say you're not feeling great one day, right, and you're like, you know what, screw it, I'm taking the day off, right, and you decide to get an extra 2 hours of sleep, and you wake up from that nap or that 8 hour deep rest, and you're like, man, I feel ready I didn't train yesterday, but I feel ready to go, and you just go and you just do a little mini session of like, I don't know, 25 on the run shots, and they all feel great. How
uh,
much more effective is it practice like that than where you're just grinding away at 100 150 reps where you just like you're trying to chase that, I don't want to say that high, but you're trying to chase that feeling again and you're not getting it. So being strategic about how you're practicing, and you spoke about reps, so that's why I'm rambling, but I'm thinking about this is like how effective are our reps and how can we make sure that we have, again, that perfect practice.
Perfect practice. I think it's to slow down, and that
Yeah,
that that brings on another thought process as far as like the group sessions, these large group sessions, mainly about getting reps. It's like, okay, let's set up a drill. Let's get reps, 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 reps. And then in between, you got a lot of standing. So it's like, okay, let's get high reps, and then we're also getting a lot of standing in between. And I feel like in the one-on-one and small group, you can break it down so slow to where you can really be critical. And I see a lot of your videos on social media. That's why I wanted to hop on call with you because I feel like you coach detail. You're coaching detail, and that's something, the smallest detail adds up over time. And
yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I'm like watching these group session practices and I'm noticing small details and there's not a single coach talking about it. It's
yeah,
like break it down with the athlete and then go over it with the entire group, and that's something that I mean, it does frustrate me because I want to work with more athletes. Like that's one of my goals, work with as many athletes as possible because I know for a fact that each individual I'm going to do my best to give my attention to. And I'm sure
yeah.
you noticed that too.
Jake, so I just want to say real quick, I want to tell you the reason why I coach that way. A, it's because it's who I am, it's what I'm passionate about. But B, there's a part of me where like this whole lacrosse coaching journey is a calling for me. It's like a destiny because I'm being the person that I needed when I was younger. And when you go to these camps and these clinics and
Ah,
these coaches, I don't care if you played at the highest. I played at St. Anthony's High School. That was a really good high school, right?
Yep.
But and those coaches were fantastic, but they don't have the time to focus on the individualized attention. So the way I look at it is like if someone's going to invest their money, their time, and their resources in me, I'm going to break it down to the very nuts and bolts. You might not even be sweating after the session, but I can guarantee you got a mental workout, and you know how to do something perfectly. I'm training you to practice perfectly, and
To
that's why it's so
practice perfectly.
so
Huge.
important. Yep.
Nice.
When you leave me, if we could have them, we could do 10 reps in an hour and have the most effective session because I'm coaching you on how to coach yourself. If you can leave me,
Absolutely.
if you can leave me and then go have a really effective team practice or a really effective, solo session by yourself because now you know how to do something properly, my job is done. If a parent wants to come back and be like, oh, I need my athlete to be sweating when they leave you, or I need them to be like exhausted, this, that, and the other. I can do that for you, but if you're still not satisfied, you got to find someone else because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make your athlete as close to perfect as possible so they can have the greatest reward, play the best in games, and feel the best about their self-image, their self-confidence. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. You make a great point as far as like coaching the rep, coaching the fundamental, because then they're training outside the session, right? Or they should be. They should be training outside the session. So you're coaching rep. You're not necessarily, it's not, oh, okay, come to session. Yeah, you're gonna get reps, but you also want to get breakdowns. You want to really break down different fundamental skills so that when the athlete's outside of the practice, outside of the game, that's what they're practicing. And I think the more that parents hear that, and understand that like, hey, listen, when I'm going to these one-on-one or small group sessions, we're getting taught details. It's not about competition. It's not about how many repetitions we could get within a short period of time. It's about getting coached on the small detail. And you see, just like you said, that sense of euphoria that the athlete gets. Well, and this is why I love what I do, and I'm sure you get the same exact way. It's always a positive experience. There's not been one session I've ever done, and I know this for a fact. There's not a single session I've done where I haven't seen growth some way or some sort of positivity or the person didn't learn something.
Yeah.
That's why I love what I do. That's
Yep.
exactly why I love what I do. And I'm sure it's why you love what you do and why you feel like you got this destiny and this is your calling because you probably feel the same exact way. And that most of the athletes, I think, appreciate it deep down inside. Do they always express it? No. But that's
Right.
where like that's where
Right.
like deep down within us, like we have to know as coaches, we're doing this for the athlete, but we're also, it makes us feel good too. And I think that and I think when the cool thing is, and this is something that I see too, is when the parents start to see their athlete playing confident, playing free, playing like they got a chip on their shoulder all of a sudden,
Mm.
and I think that when the parents see that, now all of a sudden the parents are like, wow, look at this. Look at what just happened. And then they fall in love with the process of watching their child develop. And it really is, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I think lacrosse is one of the greatest games ever created. It's just there's so many different roles and each player is uniquely different. Everyone's got different body types, different strengths, weaknesses, structure, and everyone's got a different role in the field. Similar to other team sports, but I really feel a team meshes together, and every single individual has the ability to give inspiration to another teammate through their play, and that goes back into I miss team coaching. Are you doing any team coaching now, Jonathan, or is that something that you're looking to get into in the future?
So it's a great question. This is funny. I'm sure this will change and evolve. I coached youth for Manhasset, um, travel team, and then I coached the St. Anthony's girls team for a year. I find that coaching was great. It's a different beast. I think they rely more on like a motivational rah rah type of coach, and I think that type of coach is a great. It's a skill to have to be a motivational person and really be someone that can move an army. I just found that my temperament, I was a little bit more quiet, a little more detail oriented, and I didn't find the best fit as a coach. So I really stayed with the training because again, I was finding that there was so much benefit and there was always growth at every session I was going to. I'm like, okay, I feel like this is more of my lane, my alley. But maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll find a team that values that more, or I'll evolve as a coach and a trainer in the future. But for right now, I love my business. I love what I do. I love the individualized attention. I love seeing that growth. So I'm kind of strictly a trainer right now.
And sometimes I think it's good to have a mix of both, and even like if you had a coach that was like that, and then you have another coach that's like you, and you even out, you balance it out. I
Yeah,
think that that's something that's really important too, is the coaching, the type of coaches that you're working with. You need to be able to have some sort of balance, especially sometimes, and an athlete is always going to an athlete's always going to be in their mind. And you need coaches that are interested in and care enough to ask the athlete, hey, what's going on if you make a mistake? Instead of, and this is something that I talked about with Coach Jimmy Montana recently, was the idea of tunnel vision. And if an athlete gets tunnel vision, they kind of lose their ability to have their eyes up, seeing different plays happening
right.
and how that affects the athlete over time. And we were talking a little bit about the response the coach can have. Like, for instance, if an athlete gets tunnel vision and they run out of bounds and they turn the ball over, the first initial response from the coach is going to be, get out of the game, go
Yeah,
sit over here. Instead of, hey, what's up? What happened in that play? What'd you see? What do you feel like right now? What's going on in your mind?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Simple questions like that to where you could really understand the athlete and then you could help coach them through.
yeah,
This is something, and you said earlier, you said the reason why you do what you do is because you wish you had something like this growing up, or like you're giving whatever you feel like you needed when you were in the process is now what you're giving to your athletes. Very similar. There would be times where I would make mental mistakes on the field, and I could have used somebody being like, "Hey, what happened there? What's going on in your mind?
right.
What's good with you?" And if I had that, that allows me to now acknowledge. I saw something yesterday on social media, and the father was they were doing kickboxing. The father was kicking the son. And after kicking the son, he was like, "Okay, now focus on your breathing. You're strong, you're confident, you could take this."
Mm.
And the son's like focusing on his breathing. And obviously some of it, I don't know if I would necessarily kick my son, but when I see that, what he's teaching him how to like feel something
Mhm.
and be able to run through the process in his mind. Us as coaches on the field, it's the same thing. So an athlete does something great, they feel amazing. They do something wrong, well,
Right,
or they make a mistake. It's like,
right,
okay, now let's teach the emotion behind it because they
right.
know they made the mistake. The athlete knows. You run out of bounds, the athlete feels like crap about themselves.
Yeah,
All right, well, let's come off to the sideline. Let me ask you, how are you feeling emotionally here?
right,
All right, when the athlete expresses that emotion, it's like, okay, now I got it off my chest. Let's move on to the next play because it's in the past now. It doesn't matter. And I wish that more coaches would adopt that philosophy. And I feel like you probably practice that within your one-on-ones and something that Coach Jimmy Montana and I were talking about too was individualized. Like a team is individuals
yeah.
and individuals make a team. So the more you coach the individual, the team then comes together.
Hmm,
And that's
hmm.
like that's part of my coaching philosophy is like let's coach each individual. Do you feel like that's part of what you believe in, coaching individuals amongst team, amongst group?
It's 120% what I believe in. And I feel that, like I said, a head coach is really there for motivation, bird's eye view, strategy, this, that, and the other. But I think you need a few of guys like me or like a trainer on a team who can really focus on individualized attention. Jake, I want to give you a few examples. So I'll keep it short. Um, so there's a movie called The Fighter with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. Have you seen that movie?
I think so, yes.
Okay, cool. At the end scene, and this kind of goes for like any, there's probably a million videos on this, but like a boxing trainer or a boxing coach is a very valuable asset for a boxer because when they get out of a bad round and they come and sit down in the corner, and they didn't do that well, the first thing they do is they mope, they shrug their shoulders a little bit. There's a boxing trainer right there in that person's face, telling them positive affirmations, saying positive things you're gonna get them next time because they're doing a pattern interrupt in that person's brain. The
Pattern.
natural feeling is to be down in the dumps. When I was there's two examples I can think of. When I coached at St. Anthony's, I was the coach. Like the head coach was at midfield, and they're yelling. When they're on offense, they're yelling this way. When they're on defense, they're yelling this way. Right? There's a time and a place for that. We need that on a team. But me, I was the coach. I was walking all the way down to goal line extended, and I was coaching my individual athletes as they're on offense. Right? If,
Absolutely.
if a turnover happened, I'm saying something to that person, and then I'm also talking to them when they get off the field. My brother, second example, my brother was a phenomenal athlete. He played at St. Anthony's as well, recruited to a bunch of different colleges. He was trying out for the Under Armour All America games in Massapequa one year, and he had a fantastic tryout. For the times that he played attack. For the times that he did have a turnover or he didn't do so well, I'd be down there at goal line extended, looking at him, just being that support, right? And if he did something wrong or he had like a bad play, I'd say, hey, and I'd be like, and I'd say something to him because I'm trying to interrupt the mopiness or the getting down on yourself. We're trying to interrupt and program that mind to see everything as an opportunity and to stay positive through the highs and lows that inevitably come with the game.
As soon as an athlete, like they immediately get in their mind. They immediately get in their mind when they make a mistake. And when you're a coach and you're giving them the positive affirmations, like you were talking about with the boxing and with the coach being in their ear, telling them positive things over time, that's actually programming the athlete to give that to themselves. And that's within, that's a lot of my style of coaching is, and this is something that I see with a lot of my athletes too, is they'll always acknowledge the negative and they're not always acknowledging the positive. It's like
Right,
they'll go shoot, they'll miss, and they'll be like, "Oh, I suck."
right, right, right.
The first thing but then they'll go and they'll hit a corner and they don't say anything to themselves. It's like, and I try to tell them, I'm like, listen, when you make a good play, say that to yourself.
Mm,
Say it to yourself. Oh, that's a nice shot. We got to be our own best friend. You don't always have somebody that's going to be next to you giving you that positivity. We
yeah,
we sometimes need to draw it from ourselves, and that's something that Giannis Antetokounmpo talks about. And I feel a lot of professional athletes, and this is something that I run into because sometimes with a lot of my parents, I talk about the mindset coaching. Professional athletes have mindset coaches. They work with mental performance coaches. Why wouldn't young athletes, youth athletes, work with mindset and mental performance coaches?
mm,
If professional athletes are doing that, then it could absolutely work for a youth athlete. And it's hard, it's challenging because I wish I had a mindset coach, mental performance coach. I was lucky enough to where my father was my coach. And so I did get some of it. I got some of it. But it obviously, and this is something that you see, it's different when it comes from mom and dad versus a coach, somebody else out there, different perspective. And I think that some parents, see the value in that too. And I wish that growing up, I had a little bit more of an outside influence, coaching my mindset, giving me different perspective. And so to go back to what you said, and I think this is what a lot of people do as far as what they feel like their destiny is or their purpose is that very much do the same thing. I'm giving exactly what I wish I had
yeah,
and doing the best I could. And the best part about what we do is everything we're asking the athletes to do is exactly what we're asking from ourselves. It's the
yeah,
same thing. It's
yep,
just like and that's where it's the practice of what you preach. It's like, okay, I'm asking an athlete to be consistent. How can I ask an athlete to be consistent if I'm trying to grow a coaching business and I don't post on social media? It's the same
mm,
thing,
yes,
or how am I asking an athlete to learn, apply, and grow something if I'm not learning from our session, or if I'm not learning from the type of style of posts I'm making, or if I'm not learning from my own training style? And that's something we talked a little bit earlier about constantly asking yourself these questions of, is there something more I have? And, same thing. Like, I think my training routine is great, but is there more that I could add to it? Is there something else I can do? And that's where I feel a lot of coaches will either be really good players or maybe they were good coaches once upon a time, but if they don't keep evolving because the game's evolving, the athletes that you're coaching are evolving, the
Mm.
minds, like you see this all the time. You got old school philosophy sometimes clashes with athletes of this generation
Yes.
because it's different. Have you seen that within your experience?
I want to say something to that because I just saw, I come from the lacrosse and wrestling world. Um, Wrestling is a part of my training business, but it's a smaller percentage. I just think the market is, there's just the demand and financially, what have you. But so March Madness comes around with basketball, and in the wrestling world, it's March Madness. So it kind of gets overshadowed by basketball, but it's coming up. So a lot of the big dual meets are happening, and Penn State just beat University of Iowa, by a landslide at Iowa, so at their home turf. And someone wrote an article on it, and they said that this is a perfect example of Penn State University learning to adapt to the times of sport and athletics, and Iowa relying on brute strength, intimidation, and grit to win matches. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work in lacrosse. It doesn't work in. I mean, it has its place. It's just not the. It's not the only thing that works like it used to back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, maybe, right? So I think my dad said something about, he's like, yeah, man, these lacrosse athletes, they look like hybrid athletes these days. And it's true because they look like superheroes out there. They have so much skill, so much finesse. Um, it's just such a dance out there, and I think you if you don't adapt, you're going to be relying on a small piece of the puzzle that might be effective, but it's just, even if you're really great at it, it's going to chip away but not make much of a dent.
Absolutely. It's just a constant evolution, constant
Yeah,
evolution.
yeah,
And that's really, I feel when you mentioned that, you mentioned adapting. It's the willingness to adapt. It's the willingness to evolve with the game. It's so funny because I'll see some youth athletes that are definitely a lot better skilled than I was growing up. I even see the high school guys. I tell them this. I'm like, you
yeah.
realize you have more skill than I had when I was your age. It's not even
Right.
remotely close. And I think a lot of that has to do with technology and the evolution of the sport and the game. Like these kids are playing travel ball early on in their development, and it's great because they're getting a lot of exposure, they're getting a lot of repetition, they're getting a lot of live gameplay. And I think that it really does. It's speeding up the process of the evolution of the game, and I think that that's pretty cool. And especially us as coaches, it's really important that we evolve alongside with it. But yeah, Jonathan, I think that this was a great conversation. I really am happy that we finally connected. I know we've really been talking about this for a really long time.
Yeah.
Where do you think that if you were to show people where to find you, where are you mostly? Where would they go look? How do people find you on social media?
Yeah, so right now I don't have a website. I consolidate everything into my social media platforms. If you want to see an extensive amount of videos on trainings, what I'm up to, clinics, everything can be found on my Instagram page, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Everything will be uploaded at the same time, on a schedule, and you'll always see my updates there. That'll be at Next Tier Training, so Next TIER Training, and that's the best way to find me.
Awesome. Okay, and then I'm definitely going to attach that in the bottom of the link description so you guys would see it on there. Jonathan, thank you for hopping on call. I definitely want to do this again. I feel like this was a great convo, and I think we could obviously talk for hours.
Yeah.
So I feel like we'll wait some time and we'll reconnect and we'll hop back on.
Yeah, man, Jake, this was awesome. Thank you for taking the lead on this. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, we'll talk soon.